right here. Flip City Magazine. Remember Mad Magazine? Then it went woke? Well, don't worry. Flip City has no chance of going woke. That's right. 4 times a year, you'll get an actual printed magazine full of jokes, stories, comics, and more, all about today's pop culture, entertainment, and woke politics. Flip City takes terrible entertainment trends we love to hate with hilarious parodies of Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Walking Dead, Star Trek, Hunters, and more. Trust me when I say there is nothing else like Flip City on the market. So subscribe today. It will be delivered in print, or you can even get it digitally if you're one of those wacky Zoomers. Either way, follow our link and sign up today, and if you put in midnight, you get an extra 10% off. Check out Flip City Magazine today.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Midnight's Edge in the morning on this lovely Wednesday, July 17th. Time sure flies. And joining me here today is Script Doctor. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you guys all doing today? It's been one heck of an odd week, hasn't it?
It has indeed. And also joining us to talk about the oddness of this week is Mr. Chris Brawley of Bleeding Fool fame. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. We dodged a bullet, so we're good.
Quite literally, we did. So, yes, very glad to have you. It's been quite a week. We also have more people joining us. Mr. Chato will be joining us later on. Tom is otherwise occupied today and probably will not be joining us, but we'll see who else comes over the course of the stream. We are unfortunately not streaming on Rumble today. There were technical difficulties. There's no other reason for that. Yeah, we'll just have to try to remain our composure right here on YouTube in the meantime. We have a few things to talk about. The final episode of the Acolyte is out, and thank God for that. Now we're done with it, at least for the time being. We can talk some music, because we probably won't be getting any new of that, for at least not from Tenacious D, that much is certain. And then we have other news as well. I mean, there may be some boycott campaigns coming up about Captain America 4. Bleeding Fool has the story about that. So we'll get around to that as we get there. We also have a couple of super chats going in. Packing Proton says for $2, does Disney memory hold this like Willow? And yeah, we're about to get into the Acolyte proper, certainly as soon as Mr. Chato arrives. But in the meantime, this is, of course, a reference to the Willow series, which was also quite lesbian in nature. It was out for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and then they decided that it's honestly not worth the server space, and they just retracted and canned the whole thing, deleting it from Disney Plus servers, taking a tax rebate on it. You think there's any chance that that might happen for Willow as well? What say you, Chris?
Oh, I think it's out. I don't think they're going to do anything with Willow. I think they're going to completely memory hole it and not ever mention it again.
Yeah, technically they've saved Willow from themselves.
Well, yeah, after the fact, I guess, right?
True. I mean, but they haven't done that with any other franchise. So, I mean, basically said, oh, we screwed up. Bye-bye.
Honestly, that's what they need to do with the entire sequel trilogy. Kind of like would be like so easy just to have everything on Disney Plus, and then you just delete the stuff that you memory hole and say this is no longer canon. You do that with the sequel trilogy. You do that with Obi-Wan. You do that with Boba Fett. You do that with Mandalorian season 3. And now suddenly Star Wars is start looking to look a whole lot better. Now, when you're left with Mando season 1 and 2, you're left with Rogue One, and everyone keeps talking about how good Andor is. So I guess there must be something to it, and you're left with Andor. I mean, then suddenly things might not be so bad if you can just do that. Memory hold stuff that doesn't work.
Do you
Honestly, I don't
guys?
see any other way out for Disney Star Wars at this point. But sorry, carry on.
Well, do you guys remember? I haven't seen him as prominently on YouTube, but Ivan Ortega, and he was doing a re-edit of The Last Jedi, doing a fan edit. I wonder if, out of all the Disney Star Wars content, if a 10 episode Netflix style series, 40-minute episodes could be hobbled together that just kind of just takes the little elements. Because even in the Acolyte, I mean, there are a couple of, maybe plot points is too charitable a word, but there were a couple of elements in all of these shows that had a little bit of potential. It's just the execution or the writing or the acting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, always seem to handicap them. But I have seen some movies fixed in a fan edit, right? There's actually a fantastic Daniel Craig Netflix style series that a guy edited in 10 episodes for his, actually now 12 episodes, for his son to be able to watch. Took out some of the gruesome elements of it and really reformatted it completely. Not that there was much wrong with the Craig series, in my opinion. But I just wonder, I mean, we do have a lot of Disney Star Wars content. I wonder if something could be assembled out of all the parts.
Well, it has been done for the MCU. I mean, fan edits, the really well-made fan edits, I mean, they're sometimes better than the actual movies. I know that for the MCU, someone has kind of like made an MCU series, basically, which I haven't seen, but apparently it's pretty good.
I'll check that
The
out.
the problem, I think, for well, of course, you probably could do something like that for Star Wars as a whole. The problem, I think, with the Acolyte is that I think that you could cut it so that you would have good scenes, but I don't know that the footage exists to actually cut a good story, because at some point you're going to run into the problem that this has the same beginning, it has the same end, it has the same basic like story. If you just ignore the jumping back and forth in time and the flashbacks and shit, if you just look at the narrative there, you can reframe or not reframe, but restructure the narrative to make it chronological, but you're still bound by the footage that exists there.
Right.
And you can make cool sequences, but I don't know that it's possible to recut it into something significantly better because the footage for it isn't there. You can make cool sequences, but at some point you're going to run into that shit. This has the same beginning, it has the same end.
Right.
And both the beginning and the end, as we're about to see here, are pretty awful. What say you, Script, if you put an editor eye onto this and just look at what has been filmed and is in the can? Is the footage there in the Acolyte that you could re-edit it into something worthwhile?
You could edit it into a very good trailer. There's enough footage.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Then we're in agreement. Then they're good sequences.
Exactly. No, you literally could edit it with a good trailer, throw it into an interesting voiceover there to do your own narrative, get a nice 3-minute trailer that actually have potential. But no, this show abandoned its premise of maintaining a mystery. It then didn't even stick the landing on how powerful the mystery was. And essentially it just said, we now have a sect of Jedi that are perfectly fine with conspiracies in order to hide their own failure.
Oh, and Yoda may be in on it. So
no, I don't know about that. It's just
he's just a fool that didn't notice.
It's either he's the fool or that Vanessa's so powerful she could hide the fact that she's lying from Yoda.
Yeah, but we'll get back into those specific details. So basically, you could salvage the 8 episodes of the Acolyte into a 3-minute trailer for a series that doesn't exist. Right. Then I think we got it.
Yeah. I mean,
I would have preferred to have watched that, honestly.
May completely abandons her goal by like the 3rd episode or 4th if you don't include the flashback. Then at the end of it, Osha changes tunes as well for a contrivance. Like, why does she have to go train with the guy because of her sister being there? They both can't leave. Like, there's nothing saying they both can't go with him. at all.
That was so stupid to me, but we'll get it. Yeah, I mean, that was insane. I was frankly insane, but we'll get back to that. Meanwhile, Dr. Long Dongler also sent us a super stick here. Thanks for that. Everyone, please smash that like, by the way. Let everyone know that we are live and send people here. That would be much appreciated. STR Red Wolf has been a member for 21 months, and we are glad to have you. And he also says for $2, it's on time. Be still, my beating heart. Yeah, we do try to be on time every day. It's just that it's a matter of like which time zone we operate in. The one where one of us is late or something, or the one where we actually succeed. That depends a little bit from day to day. Silver Nova has been a member for 39 months, which is awesome, and we're glad to have you here as well. And also gradually warming up into the episode review, Mike Ayers wonders, what if this Virgin's retcon is to suggest there's a second Anakin out there and more Skywalkers? I could see them doing something that stupid. Well, they've done plenty to stupid things here, but I cannot foresee them making any more super duper strong male characters. Certainly not an Anakin Skywalker. I mean, why would they do that when they can do Osha and stuff like that instead, which is so much safer, more diverse, more inclusive, all of that stuff? Or what say you, Chris?
The whole thing felt like the CW in so many areas, in so many moments. The acting just wasn't there. It's like it wasn't even directed properly. So many aspects of this really seemed more like therapy for Leslie or something. I mean, you could contrast her own career against this show, her own relationships against this show, if you will. I spent too much time, what little, and I didn't watch every episode, for the record. And some episodes I just sped through.
And you didn't miss out on anything.
No, I don't think I did. But it felt like it was almost like, and even the reviewer, Shark over at Bleeding Fool, kept going back to things that just seemed like the sort of thing that the former assistant might have done in her own life. Everything about this thing was tone deaf, and everything about this thing felt very CW to me. It was a grind. It was too slow. It was too long. It was just terrible.
Well, this is, again, as I've mentioned many times before, this is a story that is predicated on a mistake that George Lucas made with the prequel trilogy. The fact that he decided to make Anakin a chosen one, that he was created by the Force. It's like, now a bad writer can do this. And guess what? There is no argument, no matter all the EU out there, no matter all the stuff that maybe Lucas or other of his people would have said, to say that there can only ever have been one Anakin created. Guess what? Sorry. No, that's not in the rules. George Lucas already said, if the Force can create one life, there's nothing to stop it from creating another, whether it's manipulated by one party or not. And now we have a bad writer that did this. However, there's also something else you can take from it, which is that you have Osha. Let's say she is a self-insert for Leslie Headland. Well, what did she do? Well, after she discovers that her teacher and mentor had lied to her and betrayed her, she kills him. And it's like, well, do you think Leslie wanted to kill her boss, but she found out something that very egregious about him? Possibly. And that could be very well what happened. Because again, as I mentioned before, a personal assistant only does things that are personal to the person they're assisting. They don't do everything, because guys, especially like Mr. Weinstein there, had lots of personal assistants that did lots of different things. And yes, they are isolated. There is always a chance she may have known. There's also a chance she may not have known. You have to take that, because that's part of the reasonable doubt. And because I've worked in Hollywood and also been personal assistants, I know that I haven't done everything. I was basically the guy that got laundry and coffee. That was it. There's another person that did scheduling. There's another person that did only driving. They were all titled personal assistants. It's just, that's how it is right now. And I know we'd love to, label her that she may have known everything, but I suspect that maybe not. Because again, as soon as she left, she started bashing the heck out of Harvey, and she knew something after the fact, but I don't know how much she knew during.
I think for me, the biggest parallel is just so she's fascinated with making the Jedi look like the bad guys and embracing, or sort of justifying evil here. But back to your earlier point about George Lucas's mistake with the prequels, I think one of the biggest too, and I'm sure you've thought it as well, is midichlorians, right? Like we don't need a backstory or origin for everything. We don't need everything explained to us. And it feels like that's what this series is also trying to do more of the same, like what you said. We don't even really need a season 2 headed towards Anakin's origins, right? We don't need
what
that.
we do need, though, is a wild Paul Chato appearing, and we have that. Paul. And you're muted. And while you get that sorted out, Chris, let's see if you can finish the point I so rudely interrupted.
Well, I was really more of a follow-up on Script Doctor's point. While it's easy to see, maybe it's not there. Maybe she didn't know anything about what Harvey was up to, or maybe she did. Maybe it doesn't matter. It's really more of a drinking game exercise to get through the show, just to kind of think, oh, I wonder if something like that happened while she was working for Harvey Weinstein. Just my own way to entertain myself while sitting through this grind. But I totally agree with Script Doctor that we don't need everything explained to us. And George Lucas, with the very first prequel, kind of set that up. So obviously people are going to do it. They're going to make their own force created
being of sorts.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So he opened the door, and of course Disney is going to go straight through it. Why not? It's almost like they're just bereft of any fun, fantasy, thrilling ideas, and it's like, oh yeah, that could work. Let's do that. So,
yeah. And now, Mr. Chato, do we have audio?
Yeah, you should have audio.
Yeah, we have audio. Perfect. Before we get into the rest here, I just want to say congrats to Daryl Brewer, who's been a member for 35 months, and Hyperguyver has been a member for 22 months, and says, thank the gods, the Acolyte is over. Leslie clearly wrote what she knows. Terrible people who want to broom, like you do with the broom, and sweep the floors and stuff, to sweep children. Yeah, absolutely, there's something to that. But now when it's over, Mr. Chato, you've seen every single episode of The Acolyte, have you not?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the final episode and the series as a whole?
Well, the final episode, there's a couple of surprises just coming from some supremely incompetent ideas, but it's no different from its predecessors. It's actually very consistent in how written in such a simplistic, juvenile way, and ironically, not even written from a television series kind of way, which can be purposely juvenile, like the $6 Million Man. I mean, you can't say, like, I'll argue with you that this final episode was probably better than most of the episodes of the $6 Million Man, but the $6 Million Man was way more enjoyable for reasons that I'm not going to get into right now. But, the Vision is schizophrenic, and it's a very thin gruel. What can I say? And apart from the enormous physics problems that they present almost every single show, which personally drives me nuts. Yeah, I mean, and Script will agree with me, and Chris, I'm sure too, is that there's just so much writing from convenience, where we need something here, we're just going to ignore logic, we're going to add something that we've never set up, or we're going to change something that we set up just to fit the thing that we need right at this very moment. That just drove me crazy.
Yeah, it feels lazy. I've done some independent films, and I run a video production company. We do a lot of commercial and corporate work. And sometimes you're just out there and you go, well, let's try this, or let's do this. You don't even get any coverage. And I would actually want to watch a behind the scenes on this every step of the way, because I knew, I can't remember where I read it. I don't know if we reported it at Bleeding Fool, but I understand that George Lucas was barred from the set of this show. And it
Oh.
shows. Yes, that's what I understand. This he was not allowed to be on the set of this show. So
Wow.
not that George is everything George touches doesn't turn
No.
to gold either, right? He's not that, but
The
this went so far afield to almost just sort of we can outdo George with our own clever ideas.
and I heard before I got on stage, you guys were talking about the retconning and things like that. In the end, this team, maybe their biggest crime was they just couldn't have the good guys be good guys and the bad guys be bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that is what Star Wars is. Star Wars is Flash Gordon versus Emperor Ming. Ming doesn't suddenly change sides.
No, unless he's trying to kill Flash Gordon.
Correct.
And
if Flash Gordon snatches some child away from Ming and kills Ming, he's not going to feel guilty and suicidal years later for saving this child. I have not understood the premise for the suicide or the Jedi being the villains at all. You really have to have a warped sense of morals and ethics to think they were the bad guys.
And they're trying to frame it that Osha is the one that's the moral center of the show. But the thing is that she has no want or goal herself. She's being dragged through a story from these other people. And really, it was just a story about saying the Jedi aren't pure. Look, here's a tainted group of them that did their own thing.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of like trying to reinforce the level of control within the Jedi Council to what every action that the Jedi do, because, well, we cannot have this rogue Jedi killing all the others, or we cannot have a story where they're framed by this rogue Jedi from a female Jedi, no doubt, that does decide to frame them for this heinous act. Well, now the Jedi have to be so diligent and so controlling of every single one of their members that this can never happen again. And that's going to be your setup to lead to how Anakin was able to fall, because there's so much control, so much resistance, denying him a master. Well, because one that was a master his age decided to off himself in a temple for no apparent reason after going into exile. So that's why it's basically like turning a helicopter parent into a bulldozer parent. And it seems that's what the setup was at the end with the Acolyte, is that the Jedi were given too much free agency. And now go to Yoda. This is what happened. Yoda, can't sense that what's her name's lying, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, how do we do this? We overcorrect.
Yeah, and it'll suddenly become a fascist group, with this massive rule over each other. And to Paul's point about $6 Million Man, it's funny because my wife and I'm forcing my wife to go back and look at old TV shows like that and Planet of the Apes and Bionic Woman, but at least back then those shows were suitable for kids, or maybe they were for dads or whatever, right? And this show, I don't know who this show's audience is. It's certainly not for kids, and I don't think it's for dads. So I think the audience is the gaggle of people that surround Leslie Headland. I honestly do not know who this is for. CW maybe, or the new Disney fans. Perhaps that are out there singing its praises. It's not hard to find NPC.
The shippers, basically, the old cat ladies. The old Twilight fans, which have grown up now.
Well, let me introduce you to something we called Star Wars, or The Empire Strikes Back.
Well, I got a note from someone saying that the fans of Acolyte are actually the real Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, what does that mean? Did they give for that?
I'm just telling you that's what they.
Well, that is the state of Star Wars today. It will never go back.
Correct.
To what it was. It's now forever. It's like a person who has had a very bad car wreck, and they are now going to be in a wheelchair and had a complete personality change or something. The Return of the Jedi is where this all ended, and it ended quite well. And I salute.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about the midichlorian, things like that. To me, now that Yoda pops up, now Yoda was in the prequels. And I've said this before. I think the biggest crime with regards to the Jedi that Lucas did was, make them so bureaucratic. I mean, he filled the prequels with all sorts of bureaucracy, and it just would have been nice to leave the Jedi as a disparate group of people that feed off their energy and the energy of the universe. And because, where does Yoda split now and go to some place in Costa Rica and just hang out on his own? I mean, he had this very serene, not Oriental, but almost like a temple vibe to him, right? He was out in the middle of nowhere in a jungle, and he was alone. And this is where he taught people. And then Lucas turned it into what I euphemistically call a condo board. And that, I think, just completely ruined the Jedi for me.
Did for me as well, because I always looked at them as like the man with no name that wanders into town and sets things right, because Obi-Wan clearly says they were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, not for the Old Republic. They did not align themselves with any government. They were there for peace and justice. That's without government. That's, this is what the society is. This is what's going on. This is the atrocity. I am a Jedi. I'm going to solve this problem at their request. And if they don't request it, I will move on, because that is what I do. Yeah, he institutionalized them, and
that's what he institutionalized it. Made it. It was. I think that was possibly the biggest mistake, and that's what they're riffing on now. And then, as Nerdrotic said, they turned the Jedi into Adam 12.
I feel like even with what George was doing in the prequels, bad as they were, it felt like, like in the central trilogy, in the original trilogy, they were like that man with no name. But for the prequels, it felt a little bit more like they were Knights Templar, Knights of the Round Table, working for the crown, etc. So I was okay with that aspect. It felt a little clunky at times, but it didn't feel like something for kids, which is why you had the pod race and Jar Jar Binks and things like that.
Well, don't put him in such a nice environment. Like stick him. Like, okay,
they should be knee deep in the crap. Like, that's what the Jedi.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted for this. I mean, honestly,
make them Knight Templar. I can see that, but don't put them. Don't elevate them to where all their clothing looks like it's been dry cleaned regularly. I mean, it's the
Lancelot syndrome, because there's never a mark on Lancelot's armor. He was so perfect, so serene, that he was able to win over Genevieve. No, I mean, that's basically it. You have this institutionalization of the Jedi. You've got you've got then the further elaboration by the writers that decided to inject Star Wars stuff, which I mentioned on the Versus show the other day. Like, they injected Star Wars aspects of volcanism into Jedi, which doesn't belong. And then what's the counter?
Sorry, repeat that again.
They injected Vulcan-like behavior into Jedi, which is there's no emotion, there's only the Force.
Right.
And then what the counter argument was, and I thought it's a funny one, but the counter argument is that, well, Jedi can't be emotionally compromised, so you're going to use a Star Trek excuse to justify a Star Trek injection into a Star Wars franchise.
And it's I have to say on that, sorry, towards the end of the episode there, when you have like this hearing and the politician wants basically the Jedi kept accountable, and he's like saying, "What is it that you Jedi always say?" I was so ready for him to say, "Live long and prosper."
Well, not only that, you also have an actor
who Vulcan.
The actor who spoke those words was actually from a really bad CW show called Supergirl, and he's not a good actor.
The black guy.
The black guy with that horrible British accent.
Right in this
case. Are there any good actors in this series? I mean, maybe there are.
That guy who played Soul was pretty good, but I mean, I don't know if he actually knew the words that he was saying in English. He may have learned the words, but not.
It was phonetic. He was given it phonetically.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the level to which he was wearing his emotions on his sleeve. I know it's not his fault, but part of the problem was I did not believe his attachment to OSHA. I did not
for a second.
Yeah, that's the problem. And that's the central core of the lie to this series. I said it in my video that I just published, which is why I was late. hurrying to do that because I was almost done. They could have just really simplified it and turned it into much more of a Paladin kind of experience, but they somehow are saddled with joining different Star Wars, not universes, but the stories. They're trying to, what you guys said, they're trying to
Gather them together.
Yeah, they're trying to thread them together and make some sense of them. And then by the end of this is where the prequels start basically at the end
about
of
100 years before the prequels start. Yeah,
Well, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The scene where Osha does the maybe it's a first force choke of Soul. Where's the rage? Where's her emotion to actually use the force without a weapon to kill Saul?
It came quickly because finally the truth came out, and he had her back turned to her, and he said it to May, and then she overheard it.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord! Like this is a terrible trope. What? You've been lying to me all this time? Die, bitch!
And that's
I
a very
really like
CW
how
she couldn't even express it.
No.
He was doing overacting
He was
because he was
overacting.
doing all the heavy lifting there. Yeah, she was
Indeed.
doing nothing. It was,
hand out.
I love how she was able to basically pull a ray and
Yes,
just pull force abilities that no one had seen before out of her ass for someone who's completely and utterly untrained in the force.
And this is a Jedi master she's killing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just goes back into the whole midichlorian thing. When you put a power level to the Jedi that's based in some sort of chemistry, then you have your contrivance to say, oh, well, that's how it works. They're the most powerful ones. They have access. They have the most strength with the Force. So even if they don't even know what they're doing, they can do it better than anyone else, which completely removes the drama of what the dark side is and what the light side is. And then at the other part is, are you supposed to tell me that for thousands of years, not a single Jedi was able to comprehend the idea of a force choke? Like she's supposed to be the first? I don't even know if that's the case. I just think it might be a threshold of dark side power as opposed to that it's never happened. And then how can someone like Soul, who clearly knows how to manipulate the force so he can do that crouching tiger, hidden dragon flying down to the ground backwards, he couldn't dismay it? So no, he decided, I'm going to accept this fate and say that it's okay for her to off him. And it
just bizarre.
It was not a good payoff for what they were trying to do at all.
That's what that soy boy Jedi did. You know, the one who just wanted to stay home and to be on TikTok for the initial mission, and who then decided, I can't live with myself, so I'm going to be force isolated the rest of my life.
Yeah.
All she had to do was basically say, here, you know what you did, now drink this poison.
Corbin.
But yeah, Torben, that's his face. But who cares?
Why not just force choke yourself? I think this show could have been well done if it was. There's Tom. If they had held back the parent trap, spoiler, that the mystery of it being twins till the end, and also do that. You know how they sort of leaned into for a while at Lucasfilm from a certain point of view. If maybe we started seeing these same scenes play out from different points of view, so that even the viewer is starting to wonder, did the Jedi do the right thing? Are these women good, bad, ugly? And then at the end, we realize, no, it may be complicated, but this woman is evil and the Jedi were good. But they obviously didn't want that to be the resonating story at the end of this.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
They weren't in this. I mean, they didn't come off evilly. They came off more incompetent.
I literally have 10 minutes. I just stopped in.
Yeah, you didn't see the show. Why are you commenting, Tom?
I'm here because, first of all, just remember, George Lucas wasn't the only one who wrote the best Star Wars. The ones that he wrote by himself are technically the worst ones, usually, aside from the first one. But he had a lot of help with that. Remember, it was saved in the edit. Oh. 2, even kids don't want to be pandered to. You write something for little kids, adults can't get into it, right? All those shows that you guys mentioned before, like Chris that mentioned, those shows were made for everybody. Kids just happen to be able to enjoy them.
Oh, for sure.
Right? You make a show for little itty bitty kids that's aimed at like 6-year-olds. Nobody beyond 6 is going to be interested in it. And even a 6-year-old's going to bitch because they don't want to be pandered to.
My daughter loved Barney.
I'd rather watch Muppet Babies than Droids. That's true.
Exactly. See, like that's there used to be entertainment that even the adults could sit around with their kid and enjoy, and that's not the same anymore. And this sounds like what you guys are saying is this is written for 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
By a 12-year-old.
Much younger than
Or what have you. Yeah.
It's a weird show. There's just so many things, inconsistencies. Keimer goes through a emo streak, and then there's that argument between him and OSHA about who's driving the
ship.
The ship.
There's no argument there. He's the more powerful one, and the other part too is, why does he even have to listen to her?
Yeah, I know. I'm not getting that. But I mean, it was telling at the very end where they have the nice sunset scene. He reaches to her because no woman should be reaching for a man in this world. Like he completely undermines what the role of a man is in a heroic situation. Plus, he has all the control over her. I mean, it's just so flaccid and weird. So there's a couple of other things too. I'm mad now that I forgot to put this in my review, but we did get the reveal that the Gherkin Lurkin, which is Venestra, I call her the Gherkin Gherkin. She has some connection with Keimer, like he was her Padawan. I forgot to mention that. So that was a reveal. The other big reveal was, which we were always waiting for, how did Mei survive the fall into the abyss?
She got sucked into a hole.
Right. However, as I point out, the keep is on fire. Anyone knows about how fires work means that it has created a negative, not thrust, a negative airspace. I can't remember the word anymore.
Vacuum?
Where, negative vacuum, where everything from the outside is going to be coming in. She wouldn't be sucked into any hole except for the one that's down in the abyss. So there's small things like that I don't think anybody really care about, but I think it's funny to mention that, you're sitting there as a writer, you have written yourself into a cul-de-sac, which writers do. And then you got to come up with both a plausible and entertaining way to solve it so it's entertaining for the audience. The fact that you got sucked into a tunnel just at the last minute didn't cut it for me.
So you're saying that tunnels are misogynistic?
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah. Well, no, they're giant holes. No, they're not. They're
misandrous.
They're also homophobic.
Yes, correct.
Oh, we all are.
We all are. So that to me, I think, was a massive failure.
I think everything was a massive failure here.
I was going to say, I think this is almost like, the whole cherry on top, however you want to put it. Like, I mean, this is the end of the train wreck, right? Well, this whole Star Wars thing for the last 10 years has been nothing but a train wreck.
I got the feeling at the very end of this that they are going to get a second season.
This is just the caboose. You might be right just on pure principle. I've pointed that out. Like, they'll do it just to spite us.
Oh, well, yeah, because let's talk a bit about that. Because we were teased with Darth Plagueis here, who appeared as a creep in the shadows.
Right.
So 2 storylines, at least from my count, maybe I missed some, but the 2 things that they teased for season 2 is 1, Darth Plagueis, who is obviously the ultimate master behind Smilo Ren, and then you also have a storyline about Smilo Ren and Venestra and what happened between the two, because obviously he is her former Padawan, and she's the one that scarred his back with his with her lightsaber whip. So those are the 2 things that they want fans clamoring for in season 2. And that kind of brings us pretty nicely to this super chat right here from Satan's Retribution, who says from 35 South African rounds. So what happens now? Does Kennedy get forced out or sidelined? How do they course correct this train wreck of a studio? Or do they just do a season 2 and carry along the same path, despite this being an absolute ratings disaster? What do you think, Chris?
I think they keep going. I mean, if you're smart, when you sign the contracts, you demand a season 2 if possible. Obviously, that's not always in the cards, but Disney's just going to continue to double and triple down. I keep hearing rumors there's no season 2. I keep hearing rumors. And if you're smart, or if you're an investor, or you only care about making money, you do not greenlight a season 2. I'm still wondering where the $180 million went. It feels like this was a money laundering experiment for some of the people involved. But
I think they actually built that island. That's where I think the $180 million went. Like it wasn't just something they found and shot at. They're like, no, we're gonna
No, it
man-made
was. It
island.
was. I can assure you it was.
I know.
You know why? Because for a moment I was like thinking, wait, is that filmed in Tenerife where I'm at right now? Because 10 minutes, literally, oh, sorry, not even 10 minutes, 5 minutes from where I live, it's an area that looks exactly like that. And then I don't mean like the hills in the background, but all of those stones which are right there. It's literally 10 minutes, 10 minutes from where I live. And then I checked and it said that it's filmed on location in Portugal. So okay, that tells me that background you saw right there, that is obviously something that they must have several locations in Southern Europe. I haven't seen it myself, but I recognize those exact stones. So it must be something that was used in shipping or something like that at some point. And since I'm near one and this was filmed in Portugal, yes, that's a real location.
I know. I'm just making a joke because where else can you justify the 180 million? Like literally, where else can you find that? Other than
Well, it
maybe
wasn't on screen, that's for certain.
Maybe it had the biggest rap party ever to exist, and we just never heard about it. Because there's nothing there to justify it. Maybe the entire travel expenses, instead of them going to like normal economy style hotels, they all went, and everyone from the higher ups all the way to the lowest person on the crew all had executive suites, 5-star hotels and something, and there were $20,000 night stays. I don't know, but there's no.
I like how you're thinking. Apart from like one of the richest men in the world, he just married away his son to
Soros,
the daughter of some. No, not Soros. Like this is in India, and their wedding, which was completely ridiculous in every kind of sense, did not cost the same as this series. So I like what you're thinking, but even if they wanted to, I don't think they would be able to party away this much money.
Well, I just know that Revenge of the Sith cost $113 million to make. The creator last year, $80 million. None of that was on the screen.
This is 18 Godzilla -1s.
It's unbelievable.
Yep.
It's really how do you run a company and not change what you're doing after this? It's beyond me. But
you can't.
I've stopped
Hollywood. Like if you screw up, you can't change. The only way that change happens is when you're replaced, and that only stops from the top down. It's basically if once Bob Iger's out, it's a no holds bar. Everybody that screwed up this company, that allowed this new person to come in, they're gone. Anything that they don't like, that they don't want to see, as long as there's not money involved with regards to obligations to release, they're gone. That's what new studio heads do. Zaslav, when he came into Warner Brothers with the Discovery merger, he killed a lot of stuff. And Sarnoff before him, she also killed a lot of stuff. That's just the nature of the game. But nobody new has come into Disney. Even when Chapek came in, he wasn't able to kill anything. The best he was able to do is greenlight Deadpool 3 before Bob Iger came in and booted him out. And then what did Bob Iger do again? Everything that Chapek was letting Ant-Man Quantumania do, he came in and says, no, it's got to be funnier. You've got less than 6 weeks to fix it before we do the release. We're not changing the release date. Now we got a very messed up story with Ant-Man, and we have subpar special effects, which would have been great 20 years ago for your low budget stuff, but there have been far too many effect shots. But today it just looks murky, like they're not even there. It was horrible, and all that came when we saw that fake regime change, and then that swap, and then that back. And you're never going to get any change at Disney until the guy at the very top is gone. Because once that person comes in, they've got no connection. They have no loyalties to the people that made the studio. The studio, they're there now. It's their job, their show. And if you're not loyal to him or her, you're out. And there's no reason for anyone at this point to stay there under new leadership.
That's my
Well,
worry too. So,
woke
but
or
yeah,
not,
Tom
you've
has
got to look
to
at the money. You've got to look at the money at some point.
Yep.
but Tom has got to look at his watch because I know that you have to be leaving.
I do. Yeah, I just I hope you guys have a great show.
Thank you, Tom.
Kyle fucked it up for everybody. Yeah.
Tom, I'm so glad you came on today.
I was here for like 5 minutes.
We'll be glad.
Thank
We'll
you.
be talking some more Kyle fucking up in a moment here.
Well, I said a lot of my feelings on it last night anyway, so yeah. But now I'm just glad the friggin' Acolyte is finally over.
It's been dreadful, and no one cares anymore. No one
Good.
no one cares. There's absolutely no interest in this. And just to hammer in that point, I found a graph here that. See, where did it go? Well, anyway, I found the graph that I can't re-find right now in this second. But it basically just showed visually what a flop the Acolyte is, because the viewership, like minutes watched, compared to all of the other Star Wars series, compared to the same cycle in release, is practically non-existent. I mean, it's so much lower for the Acolyte. It wouldn't be fun. It would be funny if it wasn't like so destructive to Star Wars. And can we talk a moment about the ending? Because this has got to be one of the most stupid endings I have ever seen in my entire life for anything. Because basically you have the three of them. You have Smilo Ren and you have the twin sisters. After they have discovered their force powers and everything, that's Osha and it's Mei, and then script. I must have missed something here, but then they just decide that the Jedi are coming and we have to flee, and for some weird reason all three of us can't flee, so Mei, the one who was assigned to be the lead witch and everything like that, I'm just going to be here while the two of you leave. And then you can brainwash me and wipe my memory since I was 8 years old, so I don't say anything. And I all decide, yeah, that's a good plan. We're going to do that. And then Osha becomes the new Acolyte. Mei gets her mind wiped, and why the hell couldn't just the three of them go? What prevented that? Script doctor, what am I missing? On behalf of Hollywood and script writing in general, what do you have to say on behalf of your profession?
That would have never made it past the pitch, actually, in any writing room situation. It should no producer would even greenlight such a thing. When they said, well, why, and then they separate. Well, why they separate? Well, they have to. Why? The Jedi are on them. Why? Like, it's just lots of whys that cannot be answered with other more whys. It'd literally be like your 5-year-old asking you those questions. Why is the sky blue? And you don't know, but they keep on asking the whys because the producer needs to know why so that they can justify the budget. They can justify it to their superiors and so forth. And in this case here, unfortunately, the person that only needed the answers was Kathleen Kennedy, and clearly she didn't care, or she understood something on such a level that how it was executed was so beyond any normal human's level of comprehension that only these two people understood what it was. And now it's an inside story for them. And the rest of the audience is now lost in ambiguity, because why bother explaining why we have to separate these kids after we spent the entire series saying it's really important to bring them together, to exonerate one over the murder of another. And now it's like, well, now they have to be separated. And sure, maybe some Star Wars fans will say, well, you have to have the rule of two. I'm like, listen, the Sith don't need to obey rules. They're the Sith. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's always been more than one of them. There may have been 2 in one area, but there might be 2 somewhere else, or there might be 4 in somewhere else. We don't know, because, like, why, of all the rules, of all the things going on the Force, the Sith have to abide by rules? That doesn't seem like a Sith thing to me.
It's probably more of a guideline.
Even if it's a guideline, still doesn't feel authentic to someone who's committing evil, who wants the most power ever. And it's like, no,
I always thought it was really dumb anyway, because now you only need like one spaceship and there's no more Siths ever. Like one
Yeah.
spaceship, one spaceship access. I mean, that's really vulnerable. Only two at any one time in the whole universe. I mean, that's not very forward thinking, is it?
Not only that, it's creates a contradiction, because you say only two because the dark side is so powerful and there's so much corruption, whatever. And it's like, well, if it's so powerful and there's only two, why could they have never been able to take over, the Republic during that 1,000 years of peace and prosperity? Well, we needed Anakin, who is the most powerful of any Jedi, to come in and help us do that. Well, then the dark side is not really as powerful. You're only able to do that because you have the most powerful Jedi on your team, as opposed to the most powerful Jedi being on their team. It just really just mucks up everything at this point. And yeah, like what are you supposed to do about it? You're also supposed to completely disregard the potential of everything. Like, sure, yeah, you can have, prior to the rule of two, you have thousands of Sith versus thousands of Jedi, and that's fun and what have you, and it's chaos. But that's where you create story. And again, the more you shrink down your world, the less likely it's going to be interesting. And this story really did shrink it down. I mean, there's nothing else going on with this now. We literally have the characters swaps. Literally, this show is about these two sisters swap places, and yet continue each other's story. And it's cyclical, and not in a nuanced way. It's cyclical in a contrived way. Because now May is with the Jedi, and Venestra is going to say, we're going to make this right. Well, clearly they're and what is she going to do? She's going to train him? Because I predicted that there was going to be a cop-out to an Obi-Wan story where Obi-Wan, he trained Anakin when he shouldn't have, and he turned it to the dark side. Well, guess what? Venestra is now the Obi-Wan of that. I wasn't expecting it to be her, but it's her. Her pupil betrayed, it turned to evil, and now she's got to do something about it. And now she's got this now Force-sensitive kid, in front of her, who's too old to train. But is she going to deny that? And is she going to be then the one that kills Khmer, and she dies as a result? And then Plagueis finds his way, out of the cave finally to create his own, acolyte that ends up getting, found on Tatooine and falling into the hands of the Jedi instead of his or Palpatine's or whatever. Well, I don't know, but it's just, I just see. It's like trying to connect the dots of it's really inappropriate. I'm sorry, but it's trying to connect the dots of a shotgun blast into a wall. Like they're all over the place. You can't really make a pattern out of it.
Yeah. Actually, that's the perfect explanation. No sense can be made of it because it was that completely and utterly idiotic. Chris, were you impressed by how this whole series ended? Was it a powerful sacrifice that May allowed herself to have her mind wiped and revert to the state of an 8-year-old? Did she do a noble sacrifice that will go down in film and TV history?
Well, I mean, it just felt low budget. The whole thing did, and throwing a few cameos of Darth Plagueis and Yoda in there, Memba berries for Yoda, just the back of his head. At least they could have played Yoda's theme music or something. That would have at least lifted the ending with just a slight dovetail, I guess. But no, this is garbage.
Well, if you didn't do that, we got a brand new ending theme movie. Did you hear ending theme song?
I was just going to say that. Is that going up the Spotify charts yet? And I just didn't know about it. This show did a lot of firsts, and all of them bad. So that's its legacy to me.
Yeah. Paul, any final thoughts on the ending of The Acolyte?
Which ending are you referring to? Are you referring to the Harlequin romance ending?
The mind wiping and how they decided that only the two of us can escape while one of us needs to be sacrificed for out of the blue.
Well, it was my understanding is that was the mind wipe was in exchange for Khmer not killing May. That was the deal. If I go with you and you wipe my sister's mind, then you don't have to kill her, right? And I think there was some conversation along
Why
those
did you have
lines.
to kill her to begin with?
because that was she broke his, their bond. She had a job to do. She failed. And there's a whole section in the show where he's going after to kill her, right?
No, he's not actually.
What?
No, I think
Timer
that,
tried to kill May.
no.
Nope. He tried to there's no sense of that established at all.
I
They
think
went-
that's something that you may have tried to rationalize.
Yeah. OSHA gets her force vision of where May is, and she says, "I'm going to go get her," and Keimer's like, "I'm going to tag along."
No, but I'm talking about in previous episodes, Keimer tried to kill May.
What episode did he try to kill May?
It was the one where the bugs took him away. He was like inches
No, that's
away.
him trying to kill the Jedi and OSHA.
Yeah,
when May hung him up into the tree, she
Yep.
ran off and found the Wookiee dead.
Yeah,
Well, he did that
that's
before
when
he
May
got
was
snagged into the tree,
deciding
but yes.
to surrender to the Jedi and instantly gave up on that.
I have some vague memory of him wanting her dead for crossing him. I just
I
have
don't know
this
about the crossing
vague.
him.
I could be
can see
wrong.
him wanting him dead so that she doesn't tell of his existence. But the thing is, that wasn't clearly conveyed. Like that's the other part too. It wasn't. Again, they were all together. There's nothing stopping them from leaving together.
And it would have been an easier solution than just wiping May's memory. It even seemed like at the end, how was she trying to ask about her sister or talk about her sister at the end to see if she could trigger the memories? I mean, what was going on there?
And he was able to do it precisely, like up until eight years of age.
Yeah, what a power!
That is quite the power. Like that's it was, again, it's writing out of convenience,
Yes.
whatever it is that they need at that time. Obviously, they've got something in mind for the future. If this thing does go on, what are the bets that she will retrieve bits of her memory along the way? Any people raising their hand?
100%.
Yeah. I mean,
if this continues.
I mean, you can tell what's going on. So we've got the two of them becoming a power couple. How that's going to manifest itself is one thing.
Yeah.
Kamir and the Lurkin Gherkin are going to have to get together. So that's two things. Vernestra and the continuation of her lie. How does that manifest itself into future stories? And what is it that she's actually telling Yoda? Is she confiding in Yoda the truth of what's going on? Part of the problem is I have in my mind Luke and Yoda getting together for the first time, and I don't see this backstory. Like, it completely ruins the relationship between me and Luke, now knowing that this is Yoda's memory. And to a large degree, his conceit. It bugs me. Now it really fucking bugs me that this is what Yoda is not telling Luke.
Well, and Disney has made the Jedi suck the whole time. Everything they've done, Disney, Star Wars, the Jedis are bad guys. I'm still wondering, is Basil a bad guy now, our little tracker friend?
The hamster?
Yeah,
the rat boy. Well, I think he's spying. That was another mystery.
No, actually, I get that, because he was shifting loyalties to whoever is good at the time, and I think that he realized that Sol is actually the bad guy, and when he did, he betrayed him. So I think the intention is that.
You're reading way too much into that.
Probably I am.
Well, I mean,
But
he
again,
did
what can you do with
sabotage
a
Sol's
ship, though?
ship. Yeah.
Why?
Because he smelled something. I mean, that's basically it. Because that's all he's doing. He's just smelling something like a weird, hairy creep.
I think he's in league with Vernestra. I think he's Vernestra's spy. That's my thought. But on the other hand, how much of the ship did he disable? I mean, they have a lot of ships crashing on planets, and they seem to survive relatively well. At least one person has remained unscathed.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're built
May,
to survive a crash, which is, way too smart for Disney Star Wars in most cases. The other part too is it's strange. You pull one wire, and all of a sudden the spaceship in space banks and topples over in between the rings of a planet, and yet he's pursuing the ship in the rings where he doesn't have to because you can still fly above it.
yeah, you can fly
How do you-
above it.
But like, how do you do that? And then the other part too is it rolls and banks, and somehow the force from that in space causes another ship slightly ahead of it to topple over end over end.
And did Saul's ship lose power and crash on the planet? I missed that.
I have no idea what happened. It's like
So-
they did the anti-gravity brakes and it just stalled.
Yeah. So here's the other physics thing too, and anyone who is into astronomy.
Yeah, and then we're going to move on. So that's
Yeah,
a final.
I got to say this though.
point.
This bugged
Yeah.
me. Is that the most dangerous weapon in space are not laser guns? It's a machine gun. Anything that ejects a particle will rip a vehicle to shreds in space. Yet these vehicles can descend into the rings of a planet, and which are nothing but particles, and not be torn to shreds. I'm sorry. I can't deal with that.
I do think the ships looked good. I do think of everything
Yes.
in the show, all of the space travel ships looked good.
I have
We'll
one
go with
comment
Star
on
Trek.
I have one comment on the spaceships is that after the universe left Lucas's hands, suddenly ships had no category. Like in Lucas's, which I preferred, you had the Hurricane model, you had the B-52, you had very distinct classes of ships, very similar to Star Trek.
Yeah.
But in Disney Star Wars, I just want, like, it's some dude in his backyard makes a modded ship. It takes it away from me. Yes, sure, you could have the Millennium Falcon, and Script and I talked about this, but if this is like a unique dude that makes unique ships, and that's a very interesting life that this guy has had. What's the other custom ships has he made for other people? But most everything else in the universe should be of a kind. It should be a model, because it's the only way economically they could pull this off. They can't just make one of these. It's ridiculous. Anyway, no one cares about that. Only I.
No, pretty much. ActionCom even wonders, maybe this is Yoda's Jacob's Ladder. Yeah, that would be one way to solve it. And ActionCom has another one as well, saying for $5, Script, if they really wanted the Star Trek ending for the Acolyte, the final words on episode 7 would be computer and program.
Yes, but Star Trek does not belong in Star Wars and vice versa.
There's way more Star Trek in this show than anyone is willing to admit.
It's
Well,
There
there's
were
especially
writers on the
Kirsten
show
there.
that never watched Star Wars, so that's probably part of the issue.
Yeah. That's fantastic. When you have writers on Star Trek who never watch Star Trek, and you have writers on Star Wars who never watch Star Wars.
Woohoo!
A recipe for success for both franchises right there.
Brilliant.
Amazing stuff. And we have another question for you for a script from John the Beard, who says, Script Doctor, you mentioned a book last time. I couldn't write it down. It was too fast. What was it, please?
Depends which book. I mentioned a lot of them. One that I mentioned is Writing for Emotional Impact. That's by Carl Iglesias. Another one is John Truby's got 2 books. One is The Anatomy of Story and The Anatomy of Genre. Those are pretty good. Then there's also Robert McKee's Story, which is a pretty decent one. It's not factually accurate with regards to production of films, but it's very accurate with regards to story structure and compelling characters.
Yeah, all right, there we go. And then Satan's Retribution says for 35 South African rounds. Looking forward to cameos of my favorite characters, Geo the Rock and the vessel named Vessel. Not including It's a Failure to Let Get... not including it is a failure to Let's Get High Republic fans. Because, yeah, of course, those are the associates of Leox Gayasi from the High Republic, Geode the Rock, and the Vessel. He's not even joking. So yeah. And leave it to Kathleen Kennedy, and you just might get that. Maybe they'll be there in season 2. You never know. You never know. And then Daryl Brewer has been a member for 35 months, and we're glad to have you. And Tommy Reviews says for $2, Hail Midnight's Edge. I guess Kyle Gass picked his destiny.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, of course.
Clever.
This was all over the place yesterday. But of course, since this is the first live stream that we've had since then, today is when we're going to cover it here. The background here, of course, is the band Tenacious D, namely the band of Jack Black and his friend Kyle Glass, who's there along with for the ride. And they were on tour in Australia when it was Kyle's birthday, and so he was presented with the cake and everything like that on stage, and he was encouraged to make a wish, which he did, where he basically wished for the would-be assassin to aim better for Trump the next time, which he thought was funny and cute. I mean, he gets high fives from that kind of stuff all the time back in Hollywood. But now suddenly the response was swift and brutal. Like he didn't notice anything right there during the concert. But afterwards, there came calls from Australian authorities to deport them from Australia. Kyle was instantly dropped by his agency. And Jack Black released a statement, more or less throwing him under the bus and shutting down Tenacious D for the foreseeable future, and canceling the entirety of the tour that they were on. Now, was this justified or something of an overreaction? What say you, Chris?
Well, I haven't really made up my mind on this because I don't like Jack Black on the outset. So I'm a little bit biased here. These are the kind of jokes people make. I'm a free speech absolutist, so I think he ought to be able to say this, as much as I might personally find that repugnant. I mean, I'm a Trump fan, so I think it might have been one of those too soon type of jokes. But I think that the assassination has really brought out, or the assassination attempt has really brought out sort of the best and worst in a lot of people. You've seen a lot of people demonstrate very respectable, genuine responses of concern and unity. And then you've got other people that have complained that the shooter missed. You've even got DC Comics writer Mark Waid doing the same thing, being angry that the guy missed because now Trump looks heroic, right? You've got people out there saying that you shouldn't share the AP photo of Trump pumping his fist with blood on his face because it gives him free promotion, because it's such a savage, patriotic image that, don't share this historical moment in history where a guy just took a bullet across his ear at a rally because it might help him win the election. So to me, this doesn't surprise me that Kyle Gass would say that. I mean, it's on brand for them. It's on brand for their humor. But I think in this environment, it probably makes a lot of sense for the agent to say, hey, we can't touch you. That's toxic right now. That was too soon. Sorry about this. Here's someone you can call down the road. I'm surprised that Australia responded the way they did. That's a new element to this story because I hadn't dived much into it. But, Jack Black was wasn't he the MC or a headliner at a recent rally or a fundraiser up in New York for Joe Biden? So, I mean, we know where his loyalties lie, but,
But he's allowed to do that. I mean, there's no,
that's right. And Kyle's allowed to say this. Kyle can say this. You can make these kinds of jokes, but just like whenever I've made any jokes or or anybody has made any jokes that are a little bit salty or that some people might find offensive, there are consequences for them. I don't met those consequences out because I think you should be able to say what you want. I might mute you on social media, but yeah, this is brought out a lot. Even on my Facebook, I've got friends, one friend in particular for a long time thinks that the whole thing was staged to make Trump look like a hero.
Oh my God.
I know. And I said, that's enough. That was my response, was that's enough, because I didn't want my friend to make an ass of themselves,
Right.
but they doubled down. And then they said at the end, and you can scrap me from your friends list if you want. And so I did. I mean, I'm not, and I typically wouldn't do that, but I just don't feel like entertaining ghoulish type stuff like that. And I would have never been at the show to begin with, but I might have walked out on it. Personally, that's my choice. That's my freedom. But Kyle's free to say what he wants. Bad taste, but so what? There's no accounting for that anymore.
Indeed. Because Paul, this was obviously in Australia. So what's the sentiment in Canada, the great nation to the north? Was this an overreaction or justified? Is it a necessary recalibration of the culture? Because that's what I see going on here.
Well, personally, I find that there is now a very clear cleaving of different tribal elements now. The people who are making the bad jokes about Trump are the same people who had the anti-Israel marches, are the same people who are promoting drugs for kids, if you know what I mean. It's all the same group. And I find that fascinating. To me, that's the most interesting part in all of this, is that it's pretty clear. You've got university professors who are anti-Semitic. They're the people who are doing the Trump jokes. So never has it been more clear what the divide is in our society. So.
Script, how about you? What say you?
Well, I'm a little bit with Chris. I don't think what Kyle Gass said was off-brand of Tenacious D. They are a comedy band that is to mock the edginess of what rock and roll and metal does. Do I think it's appropriate? No, but I agree with his ability to say it, because that's how you identify people that are of lesser character. And the other part too, and I mentioned this last night, is that Jack Black didn't roll with it the way a good improviser would, because as I said last night, what is the number one rule when it comes to a birthday wish? If you say it out loud, it will not happen. And if he did that as a sketch and said, well, now it's never going to happen, and Kyle Gass could engage the room and be like, you know what? That's why I said it out loud, because I don't want him to die. There you go. That's how you save the show. And that's how you do it.
I would have saved it.
But the thing is that, you have these two guys who maybe 15 years ago, they probably would have been able to coordinate and do that. But today they haven't, because, again, Jack Black has elevated himself to a position where he's got his own bubble and he's got his own narrative. What I found kind of really remarkable, because I have a lot of friends that are left-leaning. They hate Trump, but they don't like Biden. And they never really said anything egregious on the levels of what we've been seeing by the pro-Palestinian people or the pro-genocide people, what have you. But as soon as they heard of that, they're like, "Oh, that's just the dumbest thing you could do. Why would you ever want to try and, take out a former president and a current candidate for that office?" And then you also have to realize is that the United States as a country, since its foundation, has been number one in assassination attempts and assassinations of their country. Now, not overall in the history of the world, I will mind you. I think Norway is actually kind of in the top 10 of that. But since
really, well, yeah, go far enough back in history.
Kings being killed and whatnot. I'm talking about elected politicians. Since America was founded, it's been a lot. And in fact, in Chris and Paul's generation, definitely in Chris's generation, that this has now been officially 2, because Reagan had an attempt in 81. For Paul, it's been 4. And that's a lot. That's a lot for any country. And, that also goes down to the culture. I mean, I think this should be a watershed moment, and I think it would be brilliant. Listen, number one, Trump is going to make fun of this. He's going to make jokes about this. And he is perfectly right to do so. And we are right to make jokes about it too, so long as we also acknowledge the fact that, a hero a former chief of the fire department saved his family at the expense of his own life because of this maniac on a roof. And that is tragic, and he should be remembered, and his name should not be forgotten. And I'm just learning it now, so I apologize for not speaking it out, because that, it's all new information, and we're still trying to get our heads around this horrible act. But I think this would be a great watershed moment if maybe America as a whole took a look at themselves and said, why is it that in our very infant length of our country, we've had so many attempts on our political, our politicians and our political rivals and those that we disagree with? That needs to change, because again, you shouldn't. What does it say about the culture? I think it has to do with most recently with regards to the media, kind of gaslighting a lot of people and manipulating them. And then it also has to do with the culture, with the fact that as a rebellious culture that the United States is, I mean, that's what the Declaration of Independence was. As a rebellious culture, sometimes you have to realize that there are better ways to solve your problems than just wishing your enemy dead. And I think once you kind of evolve beyond that, where you are able to say, you know what, just because I disagree with them doesn't mean that life has to end. You might be able to right the ship a little bit more. And it'd be great. It'd be wonderful if Trump or someone of his ilk or someone of any side really with any prominence was to come forward and say, you know what, we've had way too many of this on our political leaders, whether it's from as low as the mayor all the way up to the president. I mean, wasn't there a governor like 10 years ago that was shot in the head and she miraculously survived?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see that on the frequency anywhere else so much, like especially in a republic like the United States. I mean, definitely in feudalism or totalitarian or crazy regimes, that happens all the time. But this is something where there's supposed to be civility here.
Yeah, true. You don't see it too much in the Western world. I mean, if you head down the border down to South America, it becomes much more frequent. Head down to Africa, it's also quite frequent. And rather than elections, you have like the overthrow in
Juntas.
Because I'm isolating this just between 1776 and now,
right.
Because you go back even further to the Roman Empire and to the Roman Republic, boom, tons of assassinations all the time. I'm talking within the last 200 to 300 years. It is not as bloody as it was 1,000 years ago, but it's still kind of far too bloody considering the level of sophistication that our society and the communication we do within our society is, especially for a country like the United States, which is a prominent one that is self-appointed as the leader of the free world, essentially. How free is it if politicians and anyone essentially are so easily dispatched and so many frequent attacks are occurring on their life just because of the rhetoric?
Point right there.
Yeah.
And I think that's
think about the rhetoric. I mean, they've called Trump a Russian spy for the first term for 4 years, and now he's been literally Hitler.
I love how they just memory hold that with no.
Yeah, now it's like, why would somebody assassinate? Why would somebody try to assassinate Hitler? Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. It was funny. I thought, I don't know if you guys are political wonks at all, but there's a morning news show called Morning Joe on MSNBC.
Oh yeah, I know it very well.
Mm-hmm. They're like The View. They hate Trump. They're constantly bashing him. He's a threat to democracy. And to MSNBC's credit, that show was not on the air Monday morning, and the host of the show were very angry about that. But that's a network that produced people like Keith Olbermann. So
it's interesting that you would bring up Morning Joe, because that is someone that has developed TDS in relatively modern times. Because I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Trump first got elected. And on the morning of the election, Morning Joe were the only ones that had some sensible commentary, who basically were able to call out the rest of the media for saying that we have all failed as journalists. We stopped being journalists and we started being campaigners for Hillary Clinton. And because of that, we had this massive gap in our field of view, which meant we didn't see the country. We didn't see that America was hurting because we were too busy being cheerleaders. Joe Scarborough was the one who said that. And then in the years since, he has gotten such a bad case of TDS that they might as well merge the Morning Joe with The View. And
they got slighted pretty good by Trump. Personally, they have personal issues.
That's right. There's animus there. Yeah,
there's animus there, and I think a lot of it is just that's never going to be recovered.
To the
so
point
they're
that you made,
unprofessional then.
Andre, you made a point earlier, and it was very brief about the tribalism, right? And I think that if it is a battle in the United States between the the conservatives, the America First, the patriotic people that don't want to keep blowing money in Ukraine and want to take care of people here in America and seal the border, versus the progressive one world government type people on the left, it is tribalistic. And what happened on Saturday is they came for the progressives tribe, came for the king of the conservative side, and they missed. And he stood up. He didn't stay down. He didn't let the totally inept DEI Secret Service keep him down and drag him off really quickly. He stood up, he pumped his fist, he said, fight, fight, fight. That was sort of this Braveheart moment, Mel Gibson with war paint on. And obviously the people who hated Trump before hate that even more, because he did survive, and now he's going to go up in the polls even more, and now he's going to be even stronger. So it is a battle. It's still, the battlegrounds are still drawn, battle lines are still drawn, and they hate that Trump survived. I mean, so they're just telling you what they think, which is fine. It's just expose people how they really think. Ghoulish or not, there's a real hatred there, and it is TDS. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, I mean, that's just absolutely pathetic. I mean, and then the excuses are also egregious as well, because, oh, they didn't secure that roof because it was two slopes. Dude, the guy that shot back to defend the president was on a far more larger incline than that roof.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to reframe the narrative to hide your incompetence, and that's even worse, because there shouldn't be any incompetence. And it's only recently did they finally allow Secret Service protection for RFK Jr., a guy whose family
only
is
because Trump
being taken out, only because Trump called it in.
That's right. That's exactly right. He said, "Why aren't you giving him Secret Service protection?" They did it the next day. The problem with the Biden administration, and I think Trump mentioned it in the debate, was they have never fired anybody.
No.
Someone should have resigned on Sunday or Monday, or there should have been people fired. I don't care, even if it was just, just as a show of faith to the American people. But no one's been fired. No one's going to resign. And even
The personal
charges
screen
have been
might be a
levied
good
for-
place to begin. But
Listen,
yeah.
there's criminal negligence charges regarding this. Like, listen, resigning is your step one. The next thing is like, oh, this was so incompetently done. This is almost willful negligence at the expense of not just the attempted life of the president, but the people around them. Because guess what? I've met people that worked at Secret Service. In 2007, I got to meet one of the Secret Service agents who was protecting George W. Bush in Europe. And it was awesome. And he didn't tell me anything that was juicy, but he told me that the primary source is to protect the president and then to secure the area so that no other innocent bystander is harmed. And if you fail at those two, you fail at your job and you are out. And then you are probably going to be arrested. And that's the case. Because again, the Secret Service is only there to take a bullet for the president, not for you. But they are also responsible to make sure that you're safe as well. Because guess what? The duty is of the commander-in-chief to keep their citizens safe. So that has a tier situation. It follows through with them. And
there's so many questions being asked right now. You brought up the slope of the roof, and obviously the roof that the counter snipers were up on was more sloped than that roof. But also, what about a drone? I mean, we have drones. You could have had a drone over a roof if you had really thought this roof is too sloped, so we're going to ignore this roof. You wouldn't have done that. You would have had a drone watching the top of that roof. It doesn't cost anything to have a drone watching the roof. So the more they come out with these excuses, the worse it gets for them. And I really hope some people are held accountable for this. I hope it's not malfeasance, but it's really looking like it.
I think, I mean, this is just my speculation, but I think after the election, assuming that Trump is going to survive all of the other attempts that's going to be on his life between now and then, if he makes it, when it's all changed and everything like that, I think Mayorkas, who is ultimately in charge of the Secret Service, is going to be impeached over this.
Yeah. Well, they certainly kept that roof about as secure as they keep our border, and Mayorkas is the one in charge of all that. So
exactly. So I do believe that I mean, I know that was like one impeachment attempt already that was blocked and shut down. But once that balance shifts, which it presumably will following the election, I think he's going to get impeached, and this is going to be the reason why.
Yeah.
And the woman from PepsiCo, I forget her name right now, but the woman from PepsiCo who used to guard the Cheetos, she hasn't really said anything. There's been no proper accountability. I think that is going to change.
Well,
Well,
she's the one.
She
Kimberly
did say that.
Cheadle.
Yeah, she did say she wanted 30% of the Secret Service to be female. She did say that.
Well,
that she did say, and I think that's going to spell the end for DEI on a much larger scale. We see it already. We see like Microsoft is even like firing their DEI departments right now because they're no longer a business priority. Because that study that came out years ago, which was the whole reason why the entire corporate world started rushing for DEI, has since been debunked and proven to be a bunch of bullshit. There's absolutely no profitability for a company doing DEI, none at all. If anything, it's an operational risk.
It's an indulgence. It's an indulgence. If the economy's good and you want to indulge in these kinds of high-minded platitudes and DEI, that's fine. But you even mentioned it earlier with this Jack Black backlash. And DEI right now, I feel like after this weekend, there is a shift. There's been a shift. Because if the same thing had happened to Joe Biden, if a bullet had grazed his head and any of us said anything that we thought was funny about that, we would be getting ripped on.
Oh, you can imagine what the media would have been saying and blaming Trump and Trump's supporters. There wouldn't have been any.
And he would have been made to be a hero, which is funny because in contrast, they didn't even want to say that it was an assassination attempt. Trump scrambles from stage as loud noises. Yeah.
I mean, you know what the sad thing is that he had to get down first before the Secret Service was on top of him.
That's right. That's right.
That's also and
so it feels like malfeasance, but I really want to hope for better in this world. But everyone's now convinced the CIA was involved in Kennedy's, and there's a lot of compelling evidence for it. It would not surprise me if they said, you know what, after that debate with Biden, we got to stop this dude because
actually it's more than the CIA for Kennedy. It was the CIA and the Secret Service because LBJ is quoted as saying, "Don't get those Secret Service guys near me." For years afterwards.
That's right. And that's what Nixon said.
And you know what's strange is that, listen, there's nothing wrong with female Secret Service agents. The problem is that they're usually assigned to the first lady or to the female members of the body politic. And the reason being is that so that they can go into certain private areas that would be inappropriate for a man to go. Sure. That's it. But there's still men around in the perimeter area. So it's basically, the first lady has to go to the washroom, and it's this kind of public place. We need to secure that. We put a woman in there. We put a woman next to her, next to the stall to make sure she's fine. There's guys out front of the door waiting. And then once that's all done and both of those two exit out, and it's still the men around there with a couple of the women nearby to basically keep the comfort level normal with regards to the first lady. Because again, you don't know, the first lady doesn't want a hulking man listening to her go to the washroom.
Of course.
And nor should she. And, she doesn't hire women either, but, that's the compromise you make.
At least hire an Amazon woman to protect Trump.
Well,
someone tall that at least is the same height. Good grief.
A 6'3" woman with an Adam's apple
there's plenty of them out there. I've heard.
And a 5 o'clock shadow.
That's progressive. I like
that's right. Well, did you notice the contingent of that was surrounding Trump on the most recent outing?
Yes, I was about to say, I think this is the end because, again, he was surrounded by some big, strong, tough dudes during the assassination attempt, and you saw they did their jobs, and then it was the women that cowered and didn't really do anything other than fail to holster their weapon. And also there was this one woman who did use her body as a shield, which she was way too small to do, and that's why we got this epic picture, because she was too small to actually block his view, so he could raise his fist, way above her head because he's so much bigger than her. So that's one side of it. But
But
then,
at the
at
RNC, it's
convention,
all men. At the
yeah,
RNC,
that was a bunch of linebackers
Yeah.
that was protecting him there. So, yeah, that only goes to show the difference between merit and DEI hires, which I think there's going to be a massive blowback and a massive rollback on all things DEI going forward. But let's do a couple of more of these super chats. Then we have one more story to go through while we still have Chris, and it's a bleeding fool story, so that should be fun. But first, we're going to go through these super chats on this topic. The Seaman says for $5, no mercy for those people with TDS. Data Racer was correct. If the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't be forgiving, which is not unfair. Bucky Cat says for $5, Educated Hillbilly on X has a very good rundown on why they had to cancel their content series due to insurance considerations from Gas Joke. Yeah, that's worth checking out. Neil has been a member for 23 months. Hey Neil, glad to see you. This whole Trump thing really shows folks shows folk their lack of empathy or having it. This goes beyond partisan politics. Someone lost their life. Yeah, and a few more are even dealing with probably life-changing injuries. So horrible stuff all around, and thoughts to those affected. Enslaved Hamster, I like that name, says for $5 Australian. Frank Sinatra, 1974, called the journalist a prostitute. The Australian shut down his concerts, flights, ports, and no waiter would serve him. Yeah, well, they don't mess around in Australia, apparently. Actioncom says for $10, the two G. Ford assassins, Squeaky Fromm and Sarah Jane Moore, were truly people of their times. Fromm wanted to save Redwood's forest, Moore wanted to foment a 70s revolution. Now we live in new times. We certainly
That's
do.
right.
And he follows up with for another $10. The Secret Service has a toilet division. They carry a special porta-john. The idea is that foreign governments can't get their hands on the stuff and research it to determine health.
Well, that's when they
I
travel
have read
to
this as
foreign
well.
areas. Yeah.
So interesting jobs that comes with watching the president. And Jagiard says for $4.99, there are some similarities between KK and the head of the USSS Secret Service, I guess. Both have failed at their jobs and refuse to step down. Both situations are ridiculous, and that, of course, is exactly the case. And just now, Kelechi Oki said for $10, as companies lessen their DEI divisions, I've heard that there are numerous lawsuits against BlackRock. Can't locate, but looking for a source. Did you guys hear about this as well? I haven't heard anything about BlackRock here specifically. I know that they have some issues, but I don't know more details about that. But maybe Mike the Mexican Iron Man does.
What was the question? What?
Numerous lawsuits against BlackRock, presumably DEI related. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard about that, but I can do research as you read super chats. I'm here merely to be a Mexican tactical expert and debunk some of these stories that are going around, sir.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, with that, we are going to move on to the next story, which comes from a great publication that everyone should check out, namely Bleeding Fool. And this story in question pertains to the upcoming Marvel masterpiece, Captain America 4. You know, the movie that they've been filming 3 times over now. And that's probably going to cost close to $1 billion by the time it's out, or at least it's going to need to gross that much. So it's therefore unfortunate that boycott talks have begun already over Captain America Brave New World. And this is about the comic book character Sabra, who in the comics
All
was a
right.
mutant and a Mossad agent.
Yep.
See what she looks like right there? I mean, that's a very white and blue suit with a very Israeli symbol on her
That's
on her chest
Mulgan
right there.
David.
Yeah, that's the one.
I like it. She looks hot.
Yeah, I like it too. I like it too. But Marvel evidently does not.
What?
Because in the movie Captain America Civil War, the character is going to be, but she will simply be Ruth Buff setup using her name, and she's a high-ranking member of the U.S. government, but she's going to be de-Israeli. Now, Chris, what more can you share about this story other than the setup that I just provided?
Yeah, well, so the character actually was first introduced into the comics back in 1981. One of the first truly Israeli heroes, Jewish heroes after Moon Knight. And Disney actually announced that this character would be, she was going to appear in the movie back at D23 in 2022. And Jewish media was very excited. It was going to be played by Shira Haas, who starred in the Netflix show Unorthodox. So they were very excited that she was going to be an Israeli superhero called Sabra, which actually the name Sabra just simply means Israel native. But since then, I think with the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, Marvel has just decided, you know what, she's still in the movie because we can only spend so much reshooting everything. And this movie, they've decided that she's not going to go by the name Sabra. We're not going to make any mention of that. And Jewish fans of the character can just pound sand. In other words, anti-Israel activists have already taken issue, probably ever since really she was announced, but it's certainly heated up in the last several months.
Now, if only we had some Jews on the panel. Oh yes, Paul, what do you think about this news?
Yeah, you got to skip me down this row.
Well, you're not going to pick on the Mexican Jew. So I'm not ignorant of just what's happening right now. To me, the big story is that people are rolling over and just doing what the anti-Semites want. And that to me is the big shame, is that they're loud, obnoxious, they outnumber everybody. They're born in the trenches of these left-wing universities that are manifest across North America. Many of them actually funded from Middle Eastern Arab countries. I mean, Saudi Arabia, a lot of these countries, Harvard is, they take a shit ton of money from oil-rich countries. And in the end, we now have this. And it's a tough thing to do. I wish people had the balls to just push back on it and say, shut up. Yeah. It's a country filled with regular people who are don't want the war, would love all this to end. But the problem is that the recent war has brought out the the anti-Israel sentiment. And my argument is that the war did not add anti-Israel sentiment. That has always been there. What you're seeing is just
permission to expose it a bit more.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you for they've been brave enough to come out of the darkness to expose what has always been there. So the war is not added to people who hate Israel. It's just exposed them. And so, yeah, are there going to be people now that part of the challenge too is these people are filled with such hatred. They don't want to give Israel or Jews an inch, because that somehow would represent victory.
Right.
That's really the issue. You cannot give them a victory, which is why these waves of marches, and it's been proven, have not really been anti-Israel marches. They've been anti-Semitic marches. You don't, we had huge Jewish neighborhoods blocked off by marchers. Well, why? Why did they do it? I mean, they are, the problem is that Jews in generally are being, what's the word? It ascribed Israel's problems, and we just want to live in this country the same way with everyone else. So it's and the other problem too is that the left equate Israel, the left hate the United States. Israel is a proxy for the United States, so they hate Israel.
Yeah,
these are the people who are against this Israeli character also hate the United States. Let's not forget that.
Correct. This is the only, to my knowledge, the only explicitly Israeli superhero in Marvel Comics. And she even wears the Star of David on her costume. Now, I get not going full bore with that, but one of my biggest gripes about this Captain America 4 with the Falcon as Captain America is how he has no super soldier serum. He has no super strength. How is he slinging a shield as a weapon to begin with? And one of the neat things about this character, Sabra, in the comics is she is able to give her powers to someone else. So the idea in my mind was that maybe she is secretly this superhero. Maybe she gets killed or something, but before she does, she gives Sam her super strength powers. I don't know. I don't know what
temporary though. The transfer of the power is all.
Oh, that's right. You're right. But still, he has no temporary powers now. And now she's been turned into some, I think, Russian Black Widow type character. She's not even the same thing anymore, which is so cowardice of Disney and Marvel. It's just one more point for me. I'm not boycotting the movie. I'm just going to wait until it streams. I have no interest in seeing this movie.
It is too bad that, if this stayed the same, I guarantee you there would be people with Palestinian flags marching on every single cinema protesting it.
I don't think that's going to stop even with this change. Don't you remember how they were protesting Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Yeah,
I was
it wasn't
just
so
because
bad.
she was hot enough, but that's a different reason.
It wasn't so bad.
That's true. It wasn't. She wasn't explicitly Jewish in that movie, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But still, they were mad that she had been cast in the role.
There was quite a bit of madness in the neighboring countries around Israel, because here was not only is she Israeli, she's been in the Israeli Defense Forces, in the IDF. They did not like that one bit. So there was, I'm not going to say there was like a massive thing, but certainly there was some pushback in the neighboring countries around Israel. The same countries that want to wipe Israel off the map.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, there is a manifest destiny. The Palestinian flag is not really a Palestinian flag. It's a pan-Arabic flag. It's a pan-Arabic caliphate flag. If you look at all the colors of all the flags in the region, that's what it represents. And so the idea that you can't have a dime in the middle of a football field. It's just now, thanks to Trump, he has actually started through the Accords the possibility of peace in the region. So Biden hasn't helped at all. And I think there needs to be a certain amount of strength too. And again, I don't know whether Mr. Trump is going to have this or not, but Biden has been weak, and that's why Russia invaded Ukraine. And there are countries in the world that respond to strength, and if you don't show it, they're going to exploit it. So I think
you have some videos on X. I didn't mean to interrupt, but like I've seen like some videos on X where you have like foreign leaders in China and Taiwan and stuff like that, and you see the people in the Trump era, and they're basically covering before him, like they're afraid of him, and they properly bow down for him, and then you see the same people a few years later, they don't give two shits about Biden.
Yep.
So yeah, on one hand, I believe that everyone needs to live in peace. No one, there shouldn't be any wars at all anywhere. And it's just too bad that you can't have one Jewish superhero.
It's bizarre.
Not from Disney. That's kind of like, that's pretty weak from Disney, I would have to say.
Well, right now, any Jewish superhero is going to be protested, anywhere. Yeah, look at the poor girl who was protested by Thunberg for being a singer in that crazy Eurovision Song Contest. There were huge protests. You can't have a Jewish singer in the Eurovision Song Contest.
It's too bad that none of the people at Disney who make decisions are Jewish.
Crazy, right?
Bob Iger.
Yeah, I was about to say script. I mean, how could Disney approve of this?
I don't understand it. It is a totally bizarre. You've already spent all this money. Why not create some outrage clicks at least, right? I mean, but I guess if you've got people protesting in front of the cinemas, nobody's going to want to go, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're afraid of that. There's also been a weird divide in part of the Hollywood Jewish community, and that is the fact that a lot of people are finally expressing their dislike of Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why they weren't doing it earlier. I wasn't a big fan of him. But I also think that they also don't like the way it's being handled optically as well. And so they're very much divided. So like they're very much, they're very much pro-Israel, pro-Jewish faith, don't like the idea of attacks on their land. And they just don't agree with the way the Israeli government has responded. And that's causing a divide. But that's a more reasonable divide as opposed to what we're seeing from people that are not Jewish, who appear to be one-sided on this, who appear to try to be hyperbolic with labeling certain tactics that the Israeli government is doing as something far more egregious than what actually is occurring on the ground. And there's also a lot of misinformation because, again, but not only as the people within Palestine and the surrounding areas and also Israeli, they're not disclosing a lot of information as what's actually going on there. And the journalists that are able to get in and report are also not very trustworthy either. So there's a lot of mystery going on with this. And I think that's further, exacerbating the fire that's around the situation. And on the global scale things within Hollywood, they just don't want to, fuel it anymore. So from them, they're hedging their bet saying, okay, we have this character, let's just pull back or dampen down all the things that could possibly be used to cause this to be a negative impact on the film. We know we're showing it in theaters. The last thing we need is some sort of crazy person coming in there and causing a ruckus or doing anything worse, because again, it's known to happen. Oddly enough, not always at the movies that you expect it to be, but eerily enough, like there's a fight at Frozen. There was suspicion of something going on with Joker came out, but nothing happened there. Yeah, like it's just all over the place. They don't want to take that risk. So from now, they're just, they're hedging their bets. And who knows, in 4 years, if they make a follow up to this, then they'll introduce her as Sabra, make it her origin story or some sort of BS. But again, it's really a lot of fear. And also they don't want to be implicated in the courts as well, because what happens if someone does go outside the theater or near theater, harm someone because of Disney? Well, guess what? Some families are not only going to go after the family or the estate of whoever did that. They're also going to have to give Disney, because it could be argued that they incited this by not actually taking into consideration what's going on. It'd be the same thing with regards to certain publications that chose to or also chose not to print that picture of Muhammad. Again, that fear, they're worried about lawsuits in addition to loss of life. So yeah, it's all over the place. I don't wish those types of decisions on anybody, but I also think that we shouldn't really be in this situation in the first place, because proper leadership would have obfuscated this from occurring.
Yeah, good point. Of course, we also have to hear from our resident Jew of Mexican origin, who we did not want to bypass before, but yeah,
Not Jewish, but
Mexican.
yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I'm really I guess my reaction as a non-Jew, I got several reactions. One reaction is that I was a longtime Democrat Party activist, volunteer from age 12. I've donated and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, elected many a candidate in California, voted for, what was my first election? Was that Clinton? Obama twice, Al Gore. I voted for Hillary. Now, needless to say, the last 3 years, I've had a little mental reversal of attitude, as has been well documented on YouTube, and I have seen the light.
I should say,
hence, I'm so MAGA now. I not only want to make America great again, I want to make cigars great again. The movement continues, but I guess for me, it's I think there's never been a time to stand up. Look, here's my 3 reactions real quick. Number one, numerically speaking, there's so few Jews on the planet, and insults and disgusts my intellect that people would want to see an entire, such a small group of people wiped off the face of the planet, and that's really what it is. Number two, I think there's never been a time that I've ever been more proud to stand up for my Jewish friends, and in particular for a couple reasons. One is that as a long time being in the Democratic Party, I always noticed that we would take checks from Jewish people, but when it came time to the important meetings and events, those donors often weren't invited. From Santa Monica and LA all the way up to Silicon Valley and Sacramento. It was interesting, they'd be at the dinners and the events, but when it came time when we were like deciding who was going to run for mayor of San Jose, or who we were going to run for state legislative seat, there was no one Jewish in the room. So I always had this vibe that the left, the Democrats, that were so much like kissing ass to Jews to take their checks. When it came time for the important meetings, they were never there. And it dawned on me after I left the party in particular. And I guess the third thing is that I myself am embarrassed and ashamed that I was part of a Democrat left progressive movement where I thought I was better than conservatives. I was morally superior, where I basically talked shit about people on the right side for so many years. And even now, as things have happened, especially since October, I've been disgusted at people that I called longtime friends, who I thought were great people, have shown their true colors, where literally, if I told them that like someone like Paul or Script were going to stay at my house, like I now know that they find that they're just that kind of that Jewish hate is real. Because I agree with what Paul and Script were talking about. I think this has exposed people, and I can't believe these people that I once called some of my best friends that I hung out with. I now realize that they've been anti-Jewish all along, whether they were in Hollywood or not. And it really bums me out that I was so ignorant for so many decades that this is how these people really are, that, that they had me brainwashed that conservatives were so evil. And yet here I was going along with it, happy in ignorance. And so for me personally, I've never been more, I'm not Jewish, but I've never been more angry as a non-Jew about what's happened, because I think, why do we go to, I thought we celebrated a victory over this crap from World War II. I mean, people died over this, and it breaks my heart. I don't really care about the superhero character that much. I think it's cool that there is a Jewish I think she looks cute. But if we can't even stand up for a Jewish superhero, what the F, man? Like, seriously, what the fuck? Yeah. I mean, if we can't do something as simple as protect the integrity of the origin story of a freaking comic book hero, then that tells you what a wussy ass piece of shit Disney is, Marvel is, and all the executives in that fucked up company really are.
I agree with that completely, because I think it's just messed up. I understand Script's reason. Well, again, it's not Script's reasoning, to be clear. It's Script laying out the reasoning for the Disney company for why they would chicken out the way that they do. But I still think it is disgusting. I think that in this climate, in this atmosphere, as Mike is pointing out, there are so few people of Jewish origin on the face of this earth. I mean, even in Norway, my country, there's not even 1,000 Jews, and they get so much flack from not from the Norwegian population, if we're completely honest. That's not the problem. Saying like you have this rising anti-Semitism in Europe, It's not the native European population that's behind that. Just want to throw that in there.
Yeah,
But in that environment, I think it's really cowardly to do this. If anything, this is where you make Sabra exactly like she is in the comics. And not only that, now is when you make her a positive role model. Now is when you write her a great character that people can actually can enjoy regardless of where they came from. I mean, that is what Marvel at one point was able to do with Captain America. You think that the Captain America was a big sell around the world before that movie came out? After the invasions of Iraq and stuff like that, which really didn't do any wonders for the image of America around the world. I mean, a character like Captain America, just a uniform. This was not a very popular thing. They seriously contemplated just calling the movie The First Avenger and not even calling it Captain America around the world prior to it being released. But no, they went all the way. And everyone loves Captain America, no matter where you go in the world, because they wrote a really compelling character that just epitomed the values of America at its best, which is what Captain America always was. And in so doing, they created a character that everyone in the world instantly fell behind, uniform and everything. That's what they needed to do with Sabra. And they're not doing that. And I just think that's completely coward and chicken shit. And it's the wrong decision for a company like Disney to do. They claim to be on the right side of history and all of this DEI and inclusion and bullshit. I mean, just look at their website with all of these NGOs that they're working with. It's amazing that they get anything done at all. And yet, when it comes to this, if ever there was a time to promote a Jewish superhero, it's now. And they chicken out this way. I agree completely with those wanting to boycott Captain America for that, because that is so. I don't even have words. I mean, we've always been about protecting the integrity of the original characters, even smaller side characters. But in this particular case, I think you're just taking a really weak moral stance by doing this. And,
it's like it's not going to placate the people that don't like her, that would boycott the movie just because she's in it, and it's certainly not
the people
going
to win over.
And you're not going to and you're also not going to satisfy anyone who was a fan. You know, Jewish comic book readers that may have considered her a character that they really liked. They always enjoyed seeing her in the comics or whatever. So they're not even going to give them any satisfaction. So it's a very middle of the road, cowardly take. And I feel like maybe she was in there to be able to imbue some sort of superpower. I can't stop thinking that way, but you just brought up a great point. They could put whatever words in her mouth they wanted to. She could criticize Israel just enough, the Israeli government just enough to satisfy the people that don't like Israel, and also be inspirational to people who do. It could have been done creatively, and instead they've decided to go cowardly, which is on brand, I think, for Disney these days.
I just like to say thank God that the comic book industry really did not have many Jews in it.
Yeah, me too. Good grief. Imagine.
We got a couple of super chats on this.
What are you talking about? Some of the best comic book creators were Jewish. What are you talking about?
I'm joking.
It's sarcasm. Okay.
Stan Lee. I mean, come on.
Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Mexican Iron Dimwit.
Schuster.
Yeah. What did Schuster do?
Well, he did Funny Man. He did Funny Man after he did Superman.
That's right.
Inspired by Moses.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing too is, and I know quite a bit about the Jews in Hollywood, and there's an enormous reticence to not push Jewish characters and things like that. Like, it's ironic that there's only one Israeli superhero, to tell you the truth. Jews don't want to stand out when it comes to this kind of proselytization. They just want to make things for everybody. Yeah, Moon Knight was a
Tommy
boost.
Reviews points out Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight, is a Jewish super too.
Yeah.
Although
And
they
also, I do
they
believe
changed
Ben
him
Grimm
also.
in the Fantastic Four comics is also very explicitly a Jewish character, if memory serves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this character is is explicitly a Jewish superhero, meaning, you know, she actually wears the Star of David on her uniform, right? It's like the Captain America of Israel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got Canadian superheroes wearing the Canadian flag, Canadian
Exactly.
Maple Leaf.
Yeah.
Alpha Flight.
Unfortunately, we do have a Canadian superhero that has to be leaving us.
That's right.
So, Paul, thanks for joining us today. What should people check out other than your awesome canoe heads figure?
Well, I released my final review of Acolyte. That's up, and I'm done with that, and that's it. And tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., I'm in our RV heading towards this person's house.
I'm jealous of you.
Me
I
too.
got the barbecue grill ready to go. I've cleaned out the back area. I've got new cushions for the chairs and a table. So we're not gonna be limited to the stove this time.
Okay, that's fine. And how's the weather?
It's 80, clear skies, partly cloudy, 88, 92.
Okay.
Oh, and the pool works. I got the pool in the jacuzzi.
Awesome.
Yeah, the pool's fine now.
So thanks for having me, folks. And I always appreciate it. And we'll see whether we can make it Friday. Nice to see you, Chris, and Script always.
Mhm.
Always nice.
Always fun.
Always fun. Talk to you later, everyone.
Likewise,
Bye.
Paul.
Take care.
Take care.
And we are unfortunately also losing Chris Brawley. So do tell us, what should people check out on the way out the door, other than obviously Bleeding Fool?
Well, bleedingfool.com, obviously. Yeah, sure. Thank you. We're working on a couple of stories. I think I told you behind the scenes, you know, a lot of entertainment news is kind of on low rumble right now after the assassination attempt on Saturday, but we're digging into some stuff with the new Stranger Things season 5, and nothing. Honestly, I just can't promote it. Go to bleedingfool.com or follow Bleeding Fool on Twitter, and if we're not retweeting some good Midnight's Edge content, we're probably sharing one of our latest stories, Andre.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thanks for being here today. Always a pleasure, Chris. Look forward to speaking again soon.
Likewise. Good to see you, Mike. Thanks, Script Doctor. Thanks again, Andre, for the invite. Hope to come back soon. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Then we only have a couple of super chats left here. Chris K says for $5, we need a palate cleanser. Is there anything going on in the world of comedy? Oh, this would have been a good one for Paul. Sorry about that. Andre, have you heard the new Windrose release? I have not, but I shall make it my business to check that out. Meanwhile, is there anything going on in the world of comedy? Anything you gentlemen know of? I think comedy has to come back alive after being ruined by.
We just saw comedy, The Acolyte, last night.
That was some comedy, but I thought it was kind of like involuntarily comedy, wasn't it?
No, it's still comedy.
Yeah. No argue there. Well, I don't hear any big recommendations, so all I will say is check out some great comedy of the past. Check out some awesome comedy series. Check out Allo Allo. That's one of the best series ever made. British sitcom from the 80s up till the 90s. Can't go wrong with it.
Oh, there's actually a second season of the Frasier sequel series that's been greenlit and will be premiering later this year. And the first season was actually not horrible. It was actually quite.
It was pretty
charming.
good, actually. I liked it. Yeah.
So that's back on Paramount Plus coming soon. So there's a current day comedy that has potential for you as you enjoy the first season, which I did to varying degrees. There's only a couple things off with it, but hopefully they've acknowledged that and corrected it for the second season because it's coming. Kelsey Grammer's back and
coming in September, if memory serves.
Yeah,
that should be good. So yeah, absolutely, do check that out. And then we have Bingle, Bangle, Bungle, and I'm so happy in the jungles. Been a member for 13 months, and he says with his membership badge, here's to the next season of the Acolyte. It added nothing to the Star Wars saga, but it was so stunning and brave and made the shippers happy. Yeah, the poor shippers, they haven't had much to be happy about recently, have they? So yeah, I guess that goes into the into the comedy category right there.
Shockingly, the left is not good at romance.
That's funny how that works. It's mostly like the fanfic version of it.
Well, I would say lesbians aren't really good at romance.
Yeah,
they're
that's you're right. Yeah,
just...
yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. And, lesbians in the chat are going to pile on us on 3, 2, 1. Moving on.
Well, you can pile on Mexican Iron Man.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin's Trigger Finger says for $10, I used to work at a state capitol complex where Al Gore spoke during his campaign. We were yelled at by the Secret Service when we looked out the window of our own office. You know what? I remember that. When I think it was like when Obama came to Oslo, and I wasn't working for that company at the time. This would have been in the offices of, I think it was DNB, which had offices which were like in the range of that. And the people, they were told that they could work, but they should be on the other side of the office. Curtains needed to be down. And if they did anything to those curtains, if they tried to like lift the curtains to peek to see outside, they would be shot. So yeah, they weren't messing around in those days.
Mm-hmm.
I want to note that I brought evidence that backs up the discussion earlier. Of course, this is why I'm a Mexican tactical expert, because I bring the Mexican tactical proof. Here is from a rancho. We have a stray cow here. Andre, you'll see the angles of the roof have not prevented the cow from launching himself onto the roof and been able to, kind of navigate.
Yeah, walk there just fine and safely. And I will also add that cow probably weighs a bit more than most, if not all, but most DEI hires. So I think that the excuse was relatively weak from the DEI hire head of the Secret Service right there.
And that's an aluminum roof too. They don't have a whole lot of friction on them either. So that's that just shows you how doable it actually is.
And I want to also present as Exhibit B, my people on a daily basis, without rope, without harness, with or without, well, in this case, without rifles, are able to navigate very steep slopes here. This right here is the house right next door to me. I took this picture, made friends with some of these guys. They're replacing the roof of my neighbor. They might be replacing my roof in about 3 weeks. And yeah, they're Mexican. And that's look at that slope roof. No problems there.
Okay, there we then have the solution for the female head of the Secret Service. She needs to make some more Mexican DEI hires to place them on roofs, since Mexicans can do that. Something her other DEI hires evidently cannot.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you know why I'm bringing this up? Because I can and you guys can't, because I'm Mexican.
Exactly.
But no, I love what Scribb said earlier. He managed a good point that no one really is talking about on YouTube, which has to do with the dual tier purpose of security. Their job is not only to protect the president and get him out. Their job is also to provide security for the people that will show up to be around a president. And I thought that was a very excellent comment that you made. And not a lot of people are catching that amidst this emotional discourse that we're all having about this.
Yeah, this is true. So is it then safe to say when you get a president on the receiving end of a headshot, because I believe that is the technical return for what you received?
Yeah.
And you also have one dead audience member plus 2 more very severely injured. Is it then fair to say that someone needs to lose their jobs for that?
Lose their jobs and go to jail and be financially responsible for any of the expenses associated with those injuries and death.
See, and
Yeah.
those are the 3 tiers. Also, I forgot to compliment you on that too, Script, because I wanted to compliment you about that too. But yeah, Script. What Script said is there's all 3 tiers. It's not just resign; it's be held accountable, financially and otherwise. And I think that's very, very adept, very aptly pointed out. Script, good job.
Well, all I've seen on Twitter is people just say resign. I'm like, there's a crime that happened here,
Yeah.
man. Like, come on. I mean, listen, so many people
Real
were
time as
huge
well.
to go after Alec Baldwin for all these sort of things, and fairly so. But when it comes to another person with another side, they're like, nope, just resign. That's good enough. It's like, no, man, you got to go the full distance, full 9 yards.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
All right, Script. When you come visit me, we're not going to go to a rally like I planned.
We can still go. I'm not afraid.
I'm just no. I got to protect you because the Secret Service won't. So I'm not taking you. I'm kidding. We're just messing around. I love my Script doctor. I don't know, man. I think I got fired up too by that news release on the superhero being canceled. I know and look, in the big scheme of things, it's not a big deal because we've got much more big. But you know what? Little things matter these days. Little things.
I think that is a big deal. I mean, it's a little thing at first glance, but really in the bigger scheme of things, when you look at the principle, everything behind it, I think it is a big thing.
Yeah.
It is big enough thing that it ruins Captain America 4 for me even more than it already was. When you wouldn't think that would be possible, but here we are. And Bucky Cat says for $10, did you guys see the X post about someone shorting DJT media stock? Somebody placed a massive 8 million share bet that Trump Media, that's DJT, would inexplicably collapse this week. Would this somebody happen to be Pelosi? Because Pelosi is very, very good at placing shares at times here and there. I don't know what exactly has happened with the DJT media stock. Mike, has it collapsed? I should imagine it would have.
Well, no, it surged.
That's what I was thinking. So,
but it was heavily shorted. I don't know if this is who's Finbold. I don't know if this is I don't know this news source. I found the article.
Well, if someone placed a massive 8 million share bet, I hope they geared that bet so they lost even more.
Yeah.
Because that's someone with inside knowledge. That's something that needs to be investigated.
The short positions doubled between July 1st and July 12th.
Wow.
It was a record number of shares shorted for DJT stock since it debuted on the trading platform. Uh-oh. Huh.
Okay, that's a short, but that's a different thing because here someone.
No, a short means that you're placing a bet that the stock's going to go down.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good news.
Well, someone needs to look into that.
If I still have my Bloomberg terminal, I'd look it up, and I know for sure, but I don't have a Bloomberg account. Anyway, sorry to derail the convo. Thanks, Bucky.
Yep. And then Accident Seller, he says for 50 Norwegian krona. Andre, what do you think of the Norwegian-based movie There's Something in the Bond and Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman on Netflix? I have procured There's Something in the Bond, but I have not yet had time to see it. Review will come when I have. I have it right here next to me, so I will get to see it one of these days. Same thing with Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. It's on Netflix. I have Netflix. I just haven't had time to see it. That's kind of like the irony when you run a YouTube channel dealing with entertainment. You barely have time to watch any entertainment.
Script, what do you think of The Gentleman?
Is that the Ministry on Gentlemanly Warfare one or
No,
the other
no,
Guy Ritchie show?
No,
I haven't seen the other one yet. I've got it on my queue, but I've been occupied with a lot of.
I found it really interesting. I was bored out of my skull, and then it took a twist, and the way it ended, I really liked it. But then I was like, I don't know. I saw it twice. I liked it a lot, but I wasn't sure. It's one of those movies, like sometimes you like something and you're like, I don't know if I should like this, but I do like it, but it's weird. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm wondering if it was a bad movie that I happen to like, because sometimes that happens.
That's some of the coolest movies.
Yeah. It's just I'm not a big fan of things like exposition and other stuff, and there's a lot of that crap in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guy
Anyway,
Ritchie has a tendency
if I
to do
like
that.
there's something in the bone, I shall be bothering both script and Mike with it. So
That's why I don't like a lot of these whodunits, because they sit there and like, but could it have been the ambassador who doobie, and they're talking
Oh,
about
you mean like the Acolyte?
Oh, that's the worst. That's not
That's
even
the worst one. I like the whodunits that are done well, and I also like the Columbo style. You see who does it, and it's like, how is Columbo gonna expose them and get them caught? Like, that's the fun part, because that's
Right.
their battle of wits aspect.
right. That's the dance.
Mhm.
Yeah. Indeed. Then John the Beard says for 2 Swiss franc, would you please give me a list? Again, this is from you, Script Doctor. So
List of what?
probably wants an even more extensive one than the one you already provided, I guess.
You know what? I got an idea. Subscribe to his Patreon, and everything you want to know about how to be a great scriptwriter is on there. And I'm not
there. Perfect solution.
I-
That's how
look,
we do it.
honest to God, look, this is an unrehearsed commercial endorsement for Script, because I'm not even really active on commenting on his posts. But if I were wanting to be successful as a writer, or I wanted to be a better analyst of, well, it has made me better actually, as an analyst. But everything you want to know about what you should know about what goes into making a story happen in the right way, literally, is in his freaking Patreon. And it, I mean, it's super cheap. Your Patreon's like super cheap.
Oh yeah, I keep it really cheap, but and I also, every higher tier comes with additional bonuses and discounts off the other things.
Right. Like if you want a higher script, you get discount.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to tell John, just sign up to stay, and you're going to get so much info. It's unbelievable. And the other thing that Script has on there, besides how to, is he has samples of him like going through storytelling and so forth, and why it's good, why it's bad, what happened right and wrong. It's enormously rich. I used to read about an hour a day, a random book, but I find myself, I've replaced that now between Script and a couple other things. I read his post during the week. I highly recommend it. A+.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I have almost I have over 200 posts and videos for the Patreon. Some of them blend over with the YouTube channel, but in addition to that, I also have a 1 week free tier. So you can sign up for a week for free, and you can actually read as much to your heart's desire, and then you don't have to continue it if you don't want to. But if you do, always helpful, because that support goes to me getting more content out, not just on the Patreon, but also a little bit on the YouTube side. But everybody on the Patreon gets the YouTube stuff way ahead of when it drops on YouTube. So you also have that advantage as well. Plus, you also get some bonuses when it comes to my live show that I do every Saturdays. So you find out what script I'm doing, and if you so want, just with a little bit of a reach out to me, I can provide you that script so you can read it as well, and then share your thoughts on the live show as we discuss it.
Fantastic. Yeah, that is the perfect plug right there. So then everyone, if you are interested in writing in any way, shape, or form, go and subscribe to Script Doctor's Patreon. Link for that is, of course, in the description. We're about to round out here, but we got one more super chat from SFXF314 Sabertooth Raptor saying for $5, how about the whodunit story where you never get the answer? MASH episode where the cast are reading the book The Rooster, crowd at midnight.
Oh, gosh. I haven't seen that episode in a long time. But, yeah. Well, I mean, if the memory serves, I think their subplots are what kind of tied that up. But I'll have to go back. It's been ages.
Indeed. Yeah, and with that, we are just about to round out here in the and we will be leaving this stream, but Polly is carrying on over at Midnight's Edge Espanol. So go and check that out. This stream redirects there, so you just don't have to go anywhere. Just stay where you are, and you'll be there before long. With that, I would like to say thanks to Chris for being here with us today. Thanks also to Paul, to Script, and to Mike the Mexican Iron Man. Mike, anything you want to plug before we leave?
No, sir. No.
Right.
Oh, wait. But I do want to present evidence, proof positive, that is now official. I'm not a YouTuber. Because
nice
clearly I have a coffee mug that proves it, that I am not a YouTuber. Thank you.
That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. All right, Script. Any other appearances you want to plug be on your way out the door, be other than the Patreon, which people can find in the description?
Yes. So I actually have to go back into the city again. But if things work out, I'll probably be showing up on Funeral for a Franchise over on Film Threat. So go check out that later after Polly's show, because that's going to be quite fun.
That should be fun. And STR Red Wolf wonders, is it drenched marsupials time? And the answer to that is yes, it is time for some koalas in the rain.
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koala, koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koalas in the rain.